Hello, I'm Kimberly Halkett, and this is Al Jazeera's coverage of President Donald Trump's 1 year in office. From the very first moment, this administration signaled it would challenge political norms and govern in a style unlike any that came before it. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined here in our studio in Washington, D.C. by James Davis. He served as communications director for the 2012 Republican National Convention. We're also joined in our studio by P.J. Crowley. He is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, as well as a retired Air Force colonel. But first, our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher, has this report.
The millions who voted for him knew what they were getting.
I will very simply put America first.
But even then, Trump 2.0 would be different. An American first agenda meant Trump first. Still transactional, still impulsive, but surrounded by people who were loyal, ready to deliver. He is the most present president in history, on TV almost every day taking questions, often conducting policy by soundbite or on social media sparking global reaction, stretching the definition of presidential power through executive orders.
He also is the most transparent president in history.
He's reframed America's global relationships. Europe is no longer the essential ally. He's threatened to walk away from NATO, pushing them to spend more on defence.
If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them.
His tariffs have changed the way the world trades. He sees it as a success, but it's driven up costs for consumers. Trump has challenged even the very language that presidents use, often blunt, sometimes brutal and graphic, not wrapped in legal concerns or diplomatic niceties.
I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country.
His foreign policy has delivered several tentative peace deals, most notably in Gaza, pushing the Israeli side further than it wanted to go, using his personality rather than the office.
We welcome you here to thank you for your pivotal leadership in putting forward a proposal that got the backing of almost the entire world.
He attacked Iran where others backed off. He sent a team to depose the president of another country, arrest him and drag him to America to stand trial. America exerting influence in the Western Hemisphere, a key administration goal. He brings an unpredictability to the White House, a trait which those around him believe gives him leverage.
You don't know what he's going to do. The fact that he's not predictable, he's not following the playbook of every clown who's, again, been a bureaucrat for decades, you don't know.
That door, that leads to the Oval Office. Donald Trump's approach there has been unique, and he seems to be doing everything he's doing with very little judicial or congressional pushback. Trump wants to leave a legacy. He's rebuilt the White House renamed buildings. But a legacy is about what sticks, what remains after time in office. If MAGA is the policy that drives Republicans after Trump leaves, if it's still an election winner in the hands of someone who's not Donald Trump. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Washington.
All right, we want to talk about this a little bit more with our guests here in studio. James, I'd like to start with you. Let's talk a little bit about America first in terms of economic nationalism. Donald Trump has really rejected global trade policy. Has this strengthened U.S. industry as promised?
I think we're going to have to see. Ultimately, you're looking for certainty and security in the economy, and the One Big Beautiful Bill provided that. Otherwise, we would have had the largest tax hike in American history had we not made the tax cuts that he passed in his first term permanent. That's good. Some of the deals on the trade side, he said that it's going to cause pain. I think we've seen some of that pain.
We're still feeling some of that.
Yeah, we're still seeing some of that. But inflation is down. The stock market has been up, minus today with the announcement
Not everyone
of potential
plays the stock
tariffs.
Market, though.
Yeah, absolutely not. But the average everyday American is feeling better, by and large, today than they did. Ultimately, we'll see where the trade negotiations fall. If the trade barriers come down, I think you'll see more certainty, more security around the economy, more investor optimism, and you'll see the continued growth we saw in the last quarter.
PJ, do you agree with James that ordinary Americans are feeling better?
I think there's still a lot of uncertainty, and I think this was where the Biden administration, didn't understand, the economic pain that the average American was feeling, and it remains to be seen to what extent Donald Trump is feeling that pain and responding to it as well. Look, every president puts America first, to put the slogan aside. But if you're a business owner today, what you want is predictability, and markets value predictability. And this is where, on the one hand, sure, the president can use his tariff power, depending on what the Supreme Court says about it. But look over the past year, tariffs been here, on, off, threatened again. And if you're a business owner, how can you plan in that environment?
And how can our allies plan to have the relationship with the United States, James? I mean, I'm wondering, we have these sort of articulated national security goals and industry goals. How long do Americans have to wait? How long does the world have to wait to see this experiment, if you want to call it that, work?
You're going to look and see where the trade barriers come in. Ultimately, a lot of those are ongoing. You have seen countries come to the table and say, you know what, we'll lower our trade barriers, you lower your trade barriers. And that's the way the president has always acted. Americans shouldn't be surprised about this. He told us he was going to come in and do this in the election. So if you voted for him, you knew it. If you didn't vote for him, you knew it. This is not a surprise. And by and large, people still feel surprised, or at least the media seems surprised. That's why the president has taken to going straight to the American people with his message.
Well, what about when it comes to foreign policy?
There is no surprise. I mean, and you're right. He is the most transparent, president in history, because he's told us exactly what he's going to do, and he has followed through with that. He has chosen the path of confrontation. And he's oblivious to the growing costs of his policies and his approach. Greenland is a perfect example of that. Greenland is a NATO territory. If the president wants to use Greenland, to strengthen, America's hand and NATO's hand in what is going to be a critical part of the world, in coming decades, he has that opportunity. You don't have to own that, to be able to do what is necessary to improve our defense and our collective defense.
Well, James, let's talk about Greenland's a good example, but we've also got Venezuela. We've had strikes on Syria, Iran. Donald Trump campaigned to be less interventionist. But that's not how this first year has looked, has it?
I think it has. I mean, look, he ended the war in Gaza. We finally see some hope of peace there.
There's some disagreement about whether or not that has ended.
We see some hope of peace there. We see withdrawal to some respects, even in Ukraine. Now, he hasn't gone in, unlike many other past presidents, to go in and actually try to build a democracy in foreign countries. But he has asserted a dominance in places like Venezuela, and now is looking at Greenland, to say China and Iran, Russia, you guys can't you can't be meddling in our backyard. This is a geopolitical battle, both on the foreign policy side as well as the natural resource side.
The renovation or the restoration of the Monroe Doctrine has profound implications. If you're Xi Jinping, you are chortling, when Donald Trump says that we're going back to spheres of influence, and that he has the right as the American president to summarily depose the president of a country with which we are not in conflict.
And let me just
Trump
jump in
can
for
do
a second,
that, then Xi Jinping can do that in Taiwan, and that's exactly what Vladimir Putin tried to do in Ukraine.
And for our viewers who aren't familiar with what the Monroe Doctrine is, it's about dominance in the Western Hemisphere by the United States. And interestingly, Donald Trump has now referred to it repeatedly as the Dunroe Doctrine to inject his name in or for this reassertion. But to your point, James, you said, look, we're not going to see this sort of spreading of American Jeffersonian democracy, but isn't that what we're seeing in the Middle East, this attempt with phase 2 in Gaza, for example? PJ, maybe you can weigh in on this. I mean, Donald Trump isn't exactly keeping his promises.
Oh, I think he is keeping his promises, but it depends on which ones they are. Let's not forget. Shortly after coming back to the White House, he said we're just going to take Gaza and turn it into a Riviera. Where did that come from, and where is that? Now he's trying to bypass the United Nations by forming a board of peace that will have miraculous powers in Gaza and elsewhere. And he believes that he can work beyond the system, when in fact the system over decades has worked in favor of the United States. We've built the institutions, we've written the rules, we're the dominant player within these institutions, and he's putting all of that aside, and it really depends on, what's he going to build in this place. Well, we'll see.
I mean, and the argument has been is that the old systems weren't working, and that's the need for this new system. But
America's been paying, the lion's share of the world's burdens, as it relates to foreign policy. I mean, Donald Trump wants other countries to come to the table and say, why are we paying for your national security? Why are we paying for your peace? Why are you taking advantage of us on trade deals these rules, the so-called rules, he sees them as ultimately biased toward other countries and inhibiting American, which has hollowed out manufacturing and otherwise crippled America. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, he's been upfront about that. He said that during the campaign, and he's still saying it today. And that's what his policies react to.
And PJ, to that point, I mean, we do see, for example, NATO, that members are now paying more or less their share.
Yes, the shift from 2% to 5%, very significant and very meaningful. But now he's prepared to destroy NATO, to own Greenland, and that's what's at stake here. But we have benefited significantly. Trump thinks that we're getting ripped off. We're not getting ripped off. We are the most powerful country in the world. We are the most we are the most profitable country in the world, expressly because we have worked within these institutions. We have dominated these institutions, from NATO to the World Trade Organization to the United Nations. They have worked to our benefit. And now, working outside the system, is he going to? Are we going to see dramatic results? That remains to be seen.
I disagree with that. My stepdad was a dairy farmer, and he's been ripped off. Why has he been ripped off? Because our neighbor, Canada, won't even let him import milk there without excessive trade barriers and taxes. And so many people see that. Farmers have seen that, who wanted to export, poultry across the globe. And they're tired of it. And so a lot of folks have raised concern. They said, well, this is actually going to hurt the farmers or that's supposedly going to help. And many of those folks have stood up and said, that's okay. Someone's got to stand up for us. And that's what Donald Trump is reacting to.
Let me jump in for a second, gentlemen.
The current trade arrangement that we have with Canada is one that Donald Trump negotiated.
Okay, hold that thought, gentlemen. We're going to continue this discussion, and PJ, you'll get the next opportunity to weigh in. Now, a feature of President Trump's second term has certainly been the escalation of his attacks on mainstream media. Donald Trump's accused American TV networks and major newspapers of carrying fake news. The president is an avid social media user, and his Truth Social account has become a platform for his administration's policies. Al Jazeera's Mike Hanna has more.
We got those prices down to below what they were before.
President Trump's relationship with the mainstream media is like none before. It's aggressive.
Let me just tell you, you are an obnoxious, a terrible reporter.
Sometimes rude.
Quiet.
But above all, accessible.
He also is the most transparent president in history, and he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access.
The formal news conferences of previous presidents are a thing of the past.
American companies will have the opportunity to
In this era, virtually every presidential function at the White House and beyond becomes a news event, a freewheeling, sometimes rambling discussion on topics of the day.
Apprehending the outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro,
which intentionally or not allows the president to shape a political narrative in real time, forcing the media and the public to constantly react to new developments.
Let's give CNN a chance. They've been fighting so hard to get back into the mainstream.
At the same time, dismissing any narrative that the mainstream media may try to introduce.
And even that CNN fake news, they're back there. The camera's roaring. The light will go off in any second now. They hate when I mention their name because they know it's only bad because they're crooked as hell. They're fake news, you know, the term. I think it's one of my better terms.
Layered on top of this is President Trump's use of social media as a forum for the expression of government policy. This lengthy message on social media announcing punitive tariffs against 8 traditional allies because of their resistance to the US takeover of Greenland. He says, "This is a very dangerous situation for the safety, security and survival of our planet." The capitalized S words, a classic example of creating an emphasis on key terms. The same medium used to announce an unprecedented US airstrike on Iran last year. "Congratulations to our great American warriors," types the president. "There is not another military in the world that could have done this," and he concludes, in all caps, "Now is the time for peace." Last year alone, President Trump posted more than 6,000 times on his favored Truth social medium. That's an average of 18 posts a day. The sheer volume has the effect of constantly capturing attention and drowning out any opposition. The decades-old phrase, "the medium is the message," has, in this Trump era, become a shining new truth. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
All right, we want to continue the discussion with some of those points brought up in Mike Hanna's report there. Our guests here in studio, PJ Crowley, former Assistant Secretary of State, retired Air Force Colonel. And also we have James Davis, former comms director for the GOP convention in 2012. Okay, gentlemen, when we were last chatting just moments ago, we were talking about whether or not the public was liking Donald Trump's approach. It was somewhat erratic when it comes to trade policy, foreign policy. And let's talk about it when it comes to social media. I'll start with you, PJ. I mean, American allies have said this is creating instability, unpredictability, but they're also listening and responding to it. So does that mean it is effective?
Well, it's effective in the sense that he is the dominant figure in the world today, no question about it, and it remains to be seen. You know, with that influence, is that something he's using constructively or destructively? The answer is probably a combination, you know, of the two. You know, the concern that I would have is that, you know, when he put something out on True Social, is that just something that popped into his head and all of a sudden now it goes out online? Or is there actually a policy or a policy process, you know, behind that? And that was part of what was a struggle during his first term, when he would do a lot of things, including firing cabinet secretaries via tweet. Now today, you know, the world's trying to figure out, is he actually serious? You know, and then how do they, you know, respond to that and try to put a True Social message back into a channel where something can be resolved?
Well, James, you were talking about this earlier, saying, look, this is what American voters asked for. This is what they wanted. This is why Donald Trump is now the 47th president after being the 45th. But at what point does breaking the mold put institutions like the presidency at risk?
I think that actually that is a much deeper question across societies and the culture at large in America, because we see a decline in every major institution in terms of our faith in it. And that has a large part to do with where we get our news, right? And so Donald Trump sees this and he's like, I'm going to provide you your news. I'm going to go direct to consumer, basically. He's channeling the same things that folks might accuse, you know, Jeff Bezos, why are you buying a media company? And he's saying, hey, I can be my own media company. He's the ultimate influencer in an age of influencers. He can move markets, he can renegotiate trade deals, and he doesn't actually have to use his power as president as much as threaten it. And then Marco Rubio, as we've seen in the past, comes in to be the nice guy, good cop, bad cop kind of a tandem that they got going there, and then he comes in and negotiates a new deal.
But, PJ, are we running into the risk of almost an imperial presidency? We've certainly had these accusations in the past with previous presidents, but when you see Congress being so quiet as we are right now, and we see the president so prominent.
Well, Donald Trump is the epitome of a trend where presidents have relied more significantly on executive power, and they've tried to bypass, Congress. Congress itself has been ineffective, unable, to reach consensus. Very few senators and representatives face competitive elections today. They're more concerned about being primaried from the left or primaried from the right than being defeated by the opposing power. But what this has meant as an institution, Congress is far less willing to tackle hard questions. And that is something that the United States does have to face up with going forward, is how effective is our governance. And to the extent that there is a vacuum, clearly Donald Trump is moving into that vacuum and driving policy and influence to an unprecedented degree.
And James, is there the fear, though, and I should point out, just for our viewers who may not know, that the White House and Congress are co-equal branches of government. One does not have more power than the other. Given that, when we see Donald Trump conducting policy, often in real time, as PJ said, you're not sure if this was policy that had been researched before it was articulated or if it's just off the top of his head. How does that hurt the United States globally?
Well, I think that it's neither a disadvantage or an advantage at large. I mean, it can be used for both. Ultimately, Congress has abdicated their responsibility on lots of things over the years. And we've seen a return of some of those powers through decisions at the Supreme Court, like in the Chevron deference case that says agencies cannot make laws. So we've seen a reestablishing of norms in some ways. I think what the Trump administration would argue, and what many conservatives would argue, is that there's another branch that's operating out there. And ultimately, the executive has tapped into the corporate world to leverage the corporate world to act as an enforcer of their policies. And you saw this with Jay Bhattacharya, the head of the NIH under Donald Trump. In the last administration, in conversations around COVID, you have this researcher, Jay Bhattacharya, down at Stanford, and he's putting out information around COVID that butts up against what the many in the admin are saying at that time. And they call Meta, they call Google, and they get censorship, medical censorship. They get them taken offline. And so that's what they're saying is like, you know what? It's been a collusion between the elites that have conspired to hurt the American people.
Well, PJ, let's talk about that, because it's a refrain we hear from a lot of Republicans. Look, we were censored under the Biden administration. We were not able to get our message out. Donald Trump has changed all of that by having this adversarial relationship with the media.
I mean, there's this larger question of what infosphere you belong to, and how does that affect our ability to come together as Americans and coalesce behind, a policy or a president, particularly in times of crisis. And this is a challenge for governance, because now, you look, yes, Donald Trump is probably doing exactly what his MAGA supporters want him to do, but that is a relatively small sliver of the American electorate as a whole. He is a significantly unpopular president. Joe Biden was a significantly unpopular president. And so the challenge for us inside the United States is, how do you reestablish trust and confidence, to be able to get things done as a president, as a Congress, as a country. And with Trump just whacking away day after day after day, it's going to be very difficult to get that trust back.
Oh, and for both, sure.
So he said Donald Trump ran on lower crime. You see lower crime today. He ran on getting immigration under control in the U.S. and stopping the flow of illegal immigrants across the border. You see that is down. Even people self-deporting at this point because they're afraid that they're going to get caught. You see overall this idea of free speech and reemerging across America, where more and more people are speaking up, whether they agree or disagree with the president. That's a good thing. You also see a stronger, some stronger bounds for predictability in the economy with the tax cuts. Also another thing. So promises. He's running this campaign right now. Promises made, promises kept, and many of the supporters are looking at that and saying, yes, this is true.
But there's a profound cost to this. You know, when you decide to open a criminal investigation into the leader of the Fed as an independent chair, you know, who else does that? You know, Erdogan in Turkey has done that. You know, and so we are losing the ability to lead by example, and that has profound effects across the world. You know, so here you have Donald Trump saying, you know, well, okay, Iran, if you execute one of these protesters, there'll be consequences. At the same time, we're shooting protesters in Minneapolis. You know, and so people are watching what is happening here. People have always watched what's happening here. And when we destroy our own norms, that it does affect our ability to lead around the world.
To pick up on that, James, do Americans want to be leading and have that leadership role on the global stage?
No, I think most Americans, most everyday Americans are worried about their own pocketbook issues. It goes back to what James Carville, the Democratic strategist, has said in previous elections, is pocketbook issues. You know, am I better off today? And energy prices have come down, inflation has come down. Granted, there are still questions around tariffs and where they will land and how that impacts people's consumption ability, but it's the pocketbook issues. It's the economy, stupid. That's the quote that was made famous. That still rings true today.
PJ, last word for you. We've got about a minute left.
I just think, you know, he is a commanding presence. We've seen that in his first year in office. My concern is what are the long-term costs in terms of American leadership. No one is following Donald Trump, or no one that has to answer to an electorate around the world today. You know, Viktor Orban, great, wonderful friend of ours. You know, but I think the danger here, particularly when respect to bringing back the Monroe Doctrine, is what are the implications for someone like Putin? What are the implications for someone like Xi? If Trump says, I can do whatever I want and I'm only guided by my own morality, then that's exactly where Putin and Xi are going to go as well. And that has dire implications for stability around the world over time.
That's just whether Trump says that or not. I have faith in the American system and the branches of government. I have faith in it that it does hold us accountable. That's why the Supreme Court is looking at this.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's it for us here in Washington. Thanks for watching. Our show, our special coverage of President Donald Trump's year in office, continues.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.